Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Well Aware Podcast. My name is Conrad Ruiz, and today I have a very special guest. I want to introduce everyone to Valeria Torres of Valgorithm, which, by the way, Val, such a clever name. Valgorithm focuses on supporting companies in the healthcare and legal sectors with their operations. Val, like myself, is an operator for hire, and she comes with a very strict and healthy understanding of what it means to run one's shop. In this case, she looks at two very particular sectors and two very particular industries. But with that said, Val, my goal with having you on the show today is really to kind of talk operator to operator, to get to know more about the nature of what you see in the industry. We could certainly chat about, some of the fun little adventures we've had in terms of building custom GPT bots and how they relate to our work, discussing the productization of our services as operators, and so much more. So with that, I just want to officially welcome you to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. It's always fun to chat. So let's do it live.
Val, tell me more about, if I was a stranger in a strange land, how would I get introduced to you and Valgorithm accordingly?
Yeah.
Where would I start?
It's a great question. A stranger in a strange land. That sounds interesting, first of all. I would say, as of now, it's been word of mouth, just people that have worked with me or have come across my services from like partner companies that I work with, such as my case or Zapier, or just different companies that I have serviced, and also their virtual assistants that I have put in place in the past. So that's usually how I come recommended. Somebody knows me.
Forgive me. I want to rephrase the question because I think this is what I intended to ask. When someone is getting introduced to Valgorithm as a company for the first time, what do you explain to them about what it is that you do and how you do it?
Okay. Got it. Got it. Yeah. What Valgorithm does is basically take a look at your current operations from a high level and objective view, and give you some suggestions on how you can either automate, consolidate your systems, streamline some of your operations. As sometimes, as when you're in a business, as you and I know, like you're in the nitty gritty, it's hard to see how something can change, and sometimes it can feel overwhelming to do it alone or not to have the support, especially when you're a smaller business. Most of the companies that I've serviced are anywhere from seed to Series B, and just small businesses, business owners. So taking a look at all of your operations and giving you a plan of action that you can be a part of it, almost like an extension of all the work that you'd want to do to figure out what's best for your business. I work in that way. And then we come up with a plan and put that into place. Nothing's impossible. So we just figure out how we're going to do it. And that's the fun, and that's the thrill of it for me. And then we fill the gaps with any virtual assistance as needed. And I've been doing that, I've realized, for the last 8 years, really just filling the gaps with some VA support. And now with AI and automation, it's just been fun to build out operations that can really scale and function at a larger level. So that's really what I focus on.
And within that, which, by the way, I know that it seems ironic for folks to think like, well, Connor, isn't that what Well Aware does? Isn't that what you do? And it's like, well, yeah. But the digression here is I don't do this in the healthcare and legal sectors, at all. Yeah. Or at least I haven't been requested to take a significant amount of time into any of those spaces. I've supported lawyers and I've talked with healthcare tech companies, but you've been in their businesses world. You've been in their world of business far more deeply than I ever have. And I've actually been very mindful to be like, if I come across those relationships and I need that type of help, it's like, look, I'm not the genius in the room. Val is.
Yeah. And,
so sorry.
No, go ahead. I'll tell you about it.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to commend you because you've become a great partner. And I truly believe that knowledge is not held captive. It's shared, and there's enough ideas and clients in the world that we can collaborate and help each other out. And I think that you and I have done that very well. And I truly appreciate that because I think that's how the world evolves and that's how innovation happens. I don't think that it's right to just feel like you're going to take something from me. You've been so generous, and I always want to do the same. And that's, I think we both learned so much from each other, and that's the fun in it. It's like the nerding out and like, what are you doing? What are you doing? There's so many tools, so much knowledge, so many clients. Like, there's no reason to make that like a competition. And I think I truly appreciate that on your end. Um, but back to your question. um, what was the question again? I just wanted to see that.
Healthcare and
Oh
or
yeah,
legal sector. So
legal.
where did you get involved into those spaces?
Yeah,
And maybe can you tell us, like, give us the operator's insights. What are these
yeah,
particular business operations dealing with, intending with?
totally. Well, let's just start with the healthcare. So my background is in healthcare. My master's is in healthcare operations. I've always wanted to be in healthcare, but when I went down that path for becoming a doctor and all of those prereqs and being in operation rooms, I realized that wasn't for me. But I love being able to support, I realized I love being able to support the operations side from honestly teaching. I was teaching Spanish to executives and I kind of started learning about business and I loved it. Um, Now, the difference with healthcare is that there's so many rules and regulations and compliance that comes into place. It's not the free for all at some level that some businesses can offer. There's a lot of things that you need to be aware of, or you can get yourself in trouble, or you can put patient information in trouble. And it's just a very regulated sector that you need to know these things, especially as operations, or you can get yourself, the company, or your patients in trouble. So I think that's why that's the differentiation of where you hand it off. You're aware of that. And, there's so many things that many are not aware of. And in that comes also working with doctors. And I love being able to support them in what I call putting your brain on paper. And I fell into this world of legal as well, where I think that lawyers are very similar to actually doctors at some level, in the sense of like they're an expert in their field and they also have a vision. And it's a matter of like putting their brain on paper and operationalizing that. And I do think as of recently, I've seen that a lot of law firms and lawyers are just catching up with technology. It's like before the pandemic for healthcare, which is where I was heavily involved, and it like launched and it changed a little bit and it changed the way that doctors think about using technology. I feel like until now, legal is reaching that level that they're getting comfortable with it. They're understanding they need to get on board with it and they're putting their own lens into how they can manage their own information in that capacity while still being compliant. And so it's very similar in that sense. So there's a big, question behind everything of like, can this be done? Is the information safe? Which I think we're all asking ourselves across many industries, but more importantly in these really sensitive uh, fields such as legal and healthcare. So yeah,
Right.
I
On one
think
end, you
that's
have very sensitive personal information being managed in regards to individuals' health. And on the other end, you have folks, legal considerations to account for their rights, their privacies, their secrets, and
mhm.
essentially their challenges with trying to be, I guess, legally correct, which I won't get into the hilarious battles of my world of property
Mm,
management, but my God, anytime I find myself stepping into a legal standpoint, I'm like, there is a wall of knowledge that I'm just not privy to. And I feel both incredibly stupid and incredibly naive really, really fast. And it's like, what am I supposed to take away from that? Like, I just need to go talk to someone who knows what they're doing. And then I have to,
yeah.
find some way to make amends with the fact that I'm just never going to understand the full layer of context that they're coming across with. Like that's what makes them an advisor in that capacity. Um,
Totally.
okay, so I'm curious because I like this frame, and I want to use it as a sort of talking point where you step into, whether it's healthcare or legal, you're stepping into the realms of these individuals, these service providers, expert service providers, and you're recognizing both with to all respects of their industry compliance standards, their means of operating, the type of service work that they do. You're recognizing what their workflows are, right? You've seen it before. And at the same time, you're going, hey, listen, I need you to essentially standardize yourself, right? I imagine that's what you're telling these individuals. And with respect to their business, you're saying, look, I understand that you've established a certain design to how you want things to be run. Let's ensure that that is actually documented, for one, not just not just like word of mouth out to others in the industry, because how else will you find yourself multiplying this operation by X amount based on the potential change in demand, the potential desire to, market yourself further and to grow accordingly. And then within that, so I want to sort of set that as the framework. And then I want to ask, how did you find yourself going, okay, look, as an operator for hire, I'm going to help you set up these systems that will improve your ability to perform. And by the way, part of my solutions to allowing these systems to exist is just literally feeding in manual labor parties, in this case, virtual assistants, whose jobs they're going to be to actually just facilitate a lot of the work that could frankly be done remotely, right? How did
Hmm.
you come into that particular line of doing business?
Absolutely by accident. But but I would say just from previous experience, I mean, from it really started early on that I opened up several clinics for it was actually the stem cell industry, and right out of my master's, and it just that was my first taste into like a startup, and being able to like create your own way of doing things that is different, that is attractive, that it's still within the healthcare, you know, compliance. And within that, it meant getting creative and like your budget, right? There isn't like an unlimited budget. So I think that's kind of how I learned that I enjoy that. And that's where led me to my next startup, which was in Silicon Valley before the pandemic started. And it was, I mean, I was handed a post-it as like a onboarding, and that was, I couldn't even believe that was happening. But it really made me see the importance of like scale and putting something on paper to be able to build a plane while you're flying it, but also scale appropriately. And so I think within that journey, and then the pandemic hitting, and because I had created an intranet and I had documented everything that I had done to be able to train someone next, or when somebody was hired, have them do it. And to the point that like when it did hit, we were able to scale very quickly, remotely, teach people, and just expand so fast that and in that also staying within budget, right? And then finding other resources such as virtual assistants in the Philippines that we would train them the same way, HIPAA compliant, and realizing that they can also support some of the patient care or smaller tasks that maybe the RNs couldn't fully handle, that would still support the overarching mission. So I feel like I realized that at that point, that's kind of how you scale, and that documenting, there is a lot of startups that don't want to document a lot of things just because you're building so fast. But seeing the importance and the impact that it had, and being able to do so, that there isn't duplicate, there isn't two people doing the same job without them knowing, right? That there is some level of organization, and having something documented. And this is what I always love to say, doesn't mean that it has to be that way forever. And putting the right people in place that challenge that in the right ways while keeping mission first. Like, this is the process, but at the end of the day, if it's not working, like, bring your ideas to the table. And if there's a problem, what is your proposed solution? And that's the level of like generating that real innovation and that final process that it's never actually final. It's just evolving, but it has to start somewhere. And it's so much harder to start it when you're like 20 people deep, like tons of processes, and you're already running so fast. So that's kind of where it was born, that I was very clear that like having some sort of, standard operating procedure, especially in the healthcare space where you have to, in order to be compliant at some level, um, you know, really was born. And then as we've grown and scaled with AI and technology, there is things that, a single business provider can't pay some engineer or can't source out an entire application, but there's ways that you can adjust, right? So that's where I am able to add value by evaluating systems and testing them out and asking the right questions. I've worked in product. I've, been the product manager. I understand what needs to be looked at before making a decision if it will work or not work. And then coming to an agreement with the business owner, like, hey, you could pay this much to get it built out the way you'd like it. There's also this approach in the middle that could get you there with some help that's manual. And then in the future, you could build it out once have more revenue coming in. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I always love that business model of like, look, I understand you would love to just automate all this right away, but why don't we automate this particular portion of it or systemize this particular portion of it such that you get all these benefits at this percentage of the total perspective. And then for the rest, just here are the ways in which you cut down on costs because you've just operationalized this to a point where it's just really standard and really crystal clear. And at that point, you've limited the required amount of skills necessary to be able to perform this workflow, which means you can now work with people who are the most cost effective available. And that's the thing I always find interesting about virtual assistants is like, I don't know if you could realistically find someone more at the entry level of work that the one requirement is essentially just can they operate a computer remotely and sustainably. And then obviously there are criteria to be met around virtual assistants when it comes to like good communication, good responsiveness, good etiquette around just professionalism. But still, from there, you've now, and people will say what they will about the sort of having certain nationalist views about trying to keep all of their dollars in their respective country. But if there's one thing like everyone recognizes wholeheartedly, it's like the US dollar just goes so far in other parts of the world. So when you go to those other parts of the world, because the internet just makes them a doorstep away, quite literally, that gives you such leverage. And it's really hard to ignore that. Like the Pandora's box has been opened. Like, what are you going to do
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah.
AI is just another doorstep to that. And so, as operationalists, we are always going like, look, this is the new, cheapest, most viable way to approach this solution. And that sea level will continue to rise, right? In some cases, it'll just
Yeah.
continue to rise way faster than we can expect to try to, swim upwards, if you will. So, I guess how do you stay buoyant is maybe an interesting question to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to your point, and I think so for virtual assistants, it's funny. I just interviewed one that was sharing with me that they helped build out an AI automation that basically replaced them from their job, and that's why they were looking for a job. And I was
that is
like,
unfortunate.
okay. I was
Yeah.
like, but I mean, and that's the fear at the end of the day. But I feel like yeah, sure, that could be the case, but also I feel like there somebody still needs to operate and monitor and manage
It's going to be
some
an
of these
ongoing maintenance
systems.
project, that particular
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah. Like it is, and it's going to fall either on your operations person, but it's going to cost you more money to have them doing that and fixing those problems. So
Right.
why not find somebody that can help manage that for you at a lower cost and help them, you know, like leverage them through AI to do things more at your scope, you know?
Right.
Um,
To your point, maybe that VA does lose her or their particular retainer with that company, if you will. If you want to look at that salary or wage or contractor, like however you want to look at that retainer, yes, they've lost that. Maybe on the bright side, they've now gained the skill set to be able to introduce AI to other companies. And so maybe that becomes their baseline retainer of work to constantly um, outsource themselves from any client that comes in and then just stick around as a retainer, as a
mhm,
lowered retainer maintenance worker, right? For those
totally.
same AI systems. I mean, that's the sort of the bright side of things, because if you stop the bucket, like, okay, my career is over, like this job is obsolete, like there's nothing left for me to
Yeah.
do, it's like, okay, that's a little bit too depressing, a little bit too fast. Like, we're not there yet where
No.
AI just takes over and makes it completely impossible for you to be useful. If anything, we're still living in a society where you can, oddly enough, play part in that role, but still sustain. Um, I don't know. That line of there's a slope there that gets really interesting in sort of both amazing and horrifying ways. Um,
I
I
mean,
guess.
yeah. I would also like say there is there's also you could it's perspective, right? Because at the end of the day, I also look at it like, okay, but also we have so much information out there, and with AI, you can do more than you ever could. So why not leverage that to either find more information, educate yourself more, build an agent that can help you do things that maybe you couldn't before, or, you know, help like improve your skills, or talk you through how to build a Notion database and blah, 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 you know? So
Speaking of which, are we going to get a tour of the Val GPTs? Are we? This is
we
happening today.
can,
Okay,
we can
I'm down.
totally
Let's
do
do it.
that.
Let's put like
Okay.
10-15 minutes on the clock. I want to see this.
Yes, yes, we
I think other people
totally
want to see this as
can.
well. This
Yeah, I
was
had, go
for
ahead.
those listening. This was Val coming up to me and saying, "Hey, listen, I just captured of all the cool things you showed me, the one that really stuck to me was like, I took every appliance in my kitchen and fed it to my custom GPT bot. And now my custom GPT bot knows exactly what I want to make based on my available appliances. And I was like, that's awesome. I love that example. I want to figure out how that transcends across the world. But
Yeah.
just that alone, I was like, okay, Val, how does one do that? Right? That was like my literal next question.
Yeah. And honestly, so, and then I told you, I was like, I've been wanting to post more, and like, I actually did a poll, like, who wants to learn about how to do this, like how to build your own agent. And I'm like, wow, so many people want to know about this, all these 7 people. And then I was like, I don't know that I can post about this. So this is a perfect opportunity for those 7 people that are
Yes, excellent.
interested.
7 people are gonna be really happy right now. Yes,
Okay. So should I share my screen and
please.
talk you through it? Okay, cool. Okay, so to preface, anybody can do this. I've recently switched over to a workplace chat GPT, but I did it in my personal one. Make sure I share the right screen. Okay. I'm sharing. Can you see my
Okay.
screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So, I'm in my chat GPT, and this is me. You can switch to your personal one here, but I'm in a workplace one. So I hit like my GPTs. So if I go to my GP, if you go here, by the way, there's like a ton of different ones you could use. I've recently noodled with the Canva one. It'll actually like generate images for you. It's pretty cool. There's lots of time that you can spend in here. And so if you go to my GPTs, you will see a lot, but I could probably just walk you through how to do one from scratch, and then we can go to mine.
Okay.
But so we go to create GPT. The fun thing in here is that it allows you to basically created from scratch here, and it helps you do it. So it's not like you have to be a genius and know how to do it. But I have a pro trick for you. So you're going to open another tab and you're going to go to your chat GPT and you're going to go here. And depending on what it is that you want to do, you could pick here. I'm just going to go with the general, but I'm going to create a prompt for my AI assistant. So I'm going to say like, write a prompt for AI a chat GPT assistant that will help me generate recipes and, of course, live recipes and recipes and instruct me on how to use my kitchen appliances in each.
And I understand this is a very physical example, like to literally say like, here are my kitchen appliances, but like replace that with like insert tech stack here.
Okay. Yeah, we could do tech stack. Do you want to do that instead?
No. I like this. This is very physical, and I feel like people could like visually hands-on grab like, okay, I have a blender, I have a crock pot, and I've got this like special juice slicer. I don't know, right?
Yeah. I'll show you both.
Okay, fair enough.
So here it is. So basically you'll copy this. We're going to go back to this guy and we're going to start. So basically, and you don't have to do that, but that's been the most accurate way for me. And you can replace things. And so this is actually when, you can add things in here. It's called a RAG model. So basically it's searching the system whenever needed, like they can Google search, but it's also using information that you're feeding the agent to respond to you.
You're giving it a sort of a micro database of things to pull from in addition to the internet at large.
Whenever needed. Yeah. And I'll show you some other ones that I've created, but basically here it is, and it'll pick a name for you. How about Kitchen Buddy? That sounds great. Great. Add a picture too. So it'll do that for you. And so it's going to generate that, and you can always edit this as you start using it. Sometimes things will come up that you're like, I don't want it to do that. You can always jump back in here and edit it and test it out on this side. So it'll be your assistant. You could share it with someone, or you can make it live. So here's my buddy. We're good to move on. So basically what you would do, and what I did, and I can maybe just show you in the other one, is if you have your home appliances, just try to find that exact model, and I'll show you what I did. Maybe I'll just show you here in the actual one that I did. But basically I knew my kitchen appliances, and so I found them. And oops, I meant to hit edit. Maybe you can cut that part out. It's taking long. Okay, here we go. So here it is. So basically you're a knowledgeable cooking assistant specialized in helping users with their kitchen appliances. And so I have the Bravo Slow.
And you listed the exact appliances you had with their specific manuals as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I extracted the English section of each one of these. I uploaded them in here. And so basically it has the instructions, and now it knows, and that's what I use. So basically, and if I needed to edit anything, I would add it in here. But
forgive
if I wanted
my meticulous, you mentioned you extracted the English only versions of these. Did you just do a PDF splitter? One of those classic PDFsplit.com?
Actually, no. On preview, you can just delete the pages and then save.
Preview is in what? Adobe Acrobat or
Mac? In Mac. So you do like the preview. Yeah.
Okay, so for Android users, for Android users, I don't know if I've ever looked into whether or not there is a convenient PDF management.
You could probably just feed it into ChatGPT and say just
cut out the non-English stuff. Yeah, obviously too. Yeah. Right. It's like, why am I doing work that the AI can do? which I guess
in
is the theme
my,
of the discussion here. But even in the process of creating the GPT, you've had ChatGPT help you GPT. So
yeah, you just use it and if you don't know, you just ask, how do I figure this out?
I
Just
think for
use
so
to
many
use it.
people, it's just a question of starting, right? Half of
Yeah.
it is seeing someone else do it so they can do it themselves. The other one is to just have a list of almost like I always find so oddly enough in the world of AI, it's like I actually want the human prompt.
Yeah.
I'm the human. Prompt me to then go down this workflow.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. But yeah, this is an example of literally how I made really delicious artichokes and blew my mother's mind. She could not believe it. She's tried so hard and I just like threw it in here and and they're delicious. So basically I just wouldn't have known. I didn't know how to use these like tools that have so many like buttons and bells and whistles. So
Right.
it helped me do that. Yeah.
Kitchen appliances and cooking as a whole has become such a like if you really start to look at the broader topic of like all the different recipes that have put all the different chefs and culinary folks, like we've created such an amazing database if you really look at it in terms of the internet about just every little thing that you can come to understand about food chemistry. And when you look at it
Hmm.
from that perspective and just go, I'm just asking a system that literally curates and consolidates all that information into whatever specific situation I am in, it's like, okay, great. I am now as given my ability to follow instructions, I'm as adept as any of the culinary experts that are out there. Um,
Totally.
Given I'm following whatever instructions I'm led to follow on, and I'm
Yeah.
willing to tolerate whatever comes out of that.
And I'll
Um,
tell you, you can variate this and I'll wrap it up here, but basically if there's a diet that you wanted to try, if you have your health like information, if you're comfortable putting it in there and saying like, I'd like to create what is it called? Like a grocery list based on this, you can upload a PDF of a book or section or whatever, what your doctor said and create a grocery list for me of this and yeah, I could go on and on about what I've done in these things, but
but
yeah,
I think that's the Val. I think that's the. I hate to say this. It's like that's the human prompting that I think everyone's looking for. Everyone's like, and it's not to say that I think people are ultimately lazy. I think sometimes when you're, and I hate to put my dad on the spot, but as a 98-year-old, when I tried to introduce him to ChatGPT, it's like, how do I explain to someone like him this boundless concept?
yeah,
Because when I first introduced him to the internet, like that was the same thing. Like, what the hell is he going to query, right?
yeah,
And it's the same thing here, but you're taking a totally different step into like what it is to even query within this tool. So
right.
for you to have sort of stepped into however far you want to see your sort of pioneering relationship into this, you have now figured out prompts that you're like everybody should be asking these things for their own particular sets and situations. And then it's like, okay, cool. Now that you have been exposed to this idea of what you could prompt this system, now go down your individual rabbit hole and get to an outcome. And maybe, you're just helping to set the tone of like a good milestone is like, you've maybe given this thing your sort of kitchen setup. Maybe a good thing is you've
Right.
given this thing a set of your dietary restrictions like that. Those are good milestones to hit up like information. Okay, now let me throw you a tough one here while we switch out of the screen share. Um,
Yes.
Given your background in healthcare and legal, you brought up earlier this topic of compliance. You brought up this topic of earlier of privacy. You yourself have been using ChatGPT and I imagine willingly giving it all this information about you, right? We're no strangers to the internet. This has been going on for quite a while, but this is different. This system is a whole other animal. How do you look at these two industry sectors, which are so dedicated around expertise, but also information sensitivity? And how do you recognize both AI's role, but also AI's necessary restrictions on how it's able to take consideration of this data and also the internet at large in order to help add value, help create value without compromising on people's personal information?
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And And let me begin with saying, like, this is like my personal stuff. And like
Yeah.
for anything that's like client related or anything like that, it's anonymized in any way that I would use it, or I let them know, hey, this is part of something I would like to do. As an example, like recording meetings. They know once they're a client, they're fine with it, they've accepted it. I use that's in an AI model, right? So it's that's one thing as a consultant. Now, when it comes to like an actual organization, one of the early things that I did at Alpha, which is where I previously was with our legal team, was write what was it, like an AI policy, basically, like how do we use AI within our organization. And so that's something that I always encourage for businesses early on, even if you're small, is putting those parameters of what you're comfortable with. Because it's funny, because early on we would say, like, no matter what, your team's using it, they're
Yeah.
using it, and they're going to be using it. So it's better that you just put boundaries on what that means, and educate them, right? So like, don't put any like information about patients. You want to just do a general email template, fine, but don't put in anything about the company, about any personal information, even if the model is not a learning model, unless it is like a HIPAA compliance, such as an example. Solely AI has been some a tool that I've recommended to some of my clients. That's up and coming, really great. I've met with all of their team about their compliance, had my lawyer review their privacy terms and conditions. So there's definitely a different way to approach AI and those systems when it comes to an organization in healthcare or legal, which I'm very careful about, and everyone should be careful about. And especially, and I'll say this, any free model is probably not keeping your data safe, even
Yeah.
if, it looks that way. So that's just one thing that I would say. But yeah, yeah.
I hate to say that I don't know it as well as you do, but I'm grateful that I know you. And that's been my prerogative of getting around some of these awareness gaps that, to your point, Val, like if you don't account for it early on, or if you don't account for it now, you may find yourself paying a price you weren't expecting, or you would
Mm,
have been willing had you known. And your call to action is one of safety and peace of mind, ultimately. And I imagine, based
yeah.
on what it sounds like, this isn't it's something that needs to be thought well over, but it isn't the hardest thing to do. Um,
Mm-mm.
if anything, it's more about setting the implementation plan after that, once such a policy is established. And then, to your point, literally with a human lawyer, crossing T's, dotting I's, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And yeah. And seeing what it is that you're comfortable with. I've seen organizations that are fine with paid models that they're using, that they've approved for the organization to put in certain information, and some that say absolutely no AI, you can't use it. So it also depends on, what you're comfortable with. But yeah, as long as you're mindful of we all don't really know the full scope, and what we're willing to put in it. But yeah, there's definitely boundaries we can all take.
Val, I wanna dive into one last topic for today, and then we can come to a close if that's all right with you. I wanted to give the audience a little bit more awareness to where our partnership has come to stand today. And the reason why I want to do that is because I think we're operating under a very um, particular structure that I always have a blast under this. You're like the second person that I've gotten a chance to partner with who's like a fellow operator who also happens to understand and encourage this virtual assistance unit agency dynamic within the scope of your work. I want to hear more about how you came to the decision that, looking past the competing nature of our focuses, granted, there is difference in the industries we've tend to participated in. Um, you found yourself, if I recall correctly, basically supporting clients with virtual assistants that you had I basically, you went through the hiring operation of finding and then implementing into those companies, but you felt like something was missing. I'd like to
Yeah.
sort of take the story from there, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I was using another organization. They did most of the hiring. I would just give like an overview of what we needed. They'd source and then what would end up happening is that they were the ones that should onboard them, but what would end up happening is that I would develop all of like the operations and how things need to get done. So I would end up wanting to onboard them because what I would find happened is that when I didn't, um, the person that would like, let's say the CEO would end up not using them as much because they didn't really have the time to train them, teach them, or like didn't like the way some of the things happened because it was just too fast for them to like absorb, I would say, for the level of the people that I was receiving. So what was easier was for me to understand everything that they were doing, put it in an SOP, make sure that they knew what they were doing, like cross the T's, dot the I's, teach them, onboard them, make sure that they're doing it, and make sure that they were teed up for success, and then go from there. But that meant I still managed them to this point, and that's where I was like, what am I doing? And then I learned like some of them weren't getting paid well, like, but I'm the one that's managing everything. So that's where when you came into play, and I was like, well, I should just do this. And I think that's where you probably saw it like, okay, an opportunity. That's where I wanted to use your team for hiring because you've already been doing it. And all I really want is to continue doing what I'm doing, which is managing within healthcare and legal, which is its own regulated, like, I want to make sure I have eyes on it if I'm the one responsible for putting them in place, which is, I think, where you were comfortable in that arrangement, which has been awesome. So
I've always sought to fractionalize every single element of business that I understood and could execute on and say, this is a serviceable workflow. I saw, and what you described to me was like, okay, like you're leaving value on the table. Can't do that at Valgorithm.
Val,
In
you.
order to take the connection between a client in need with an assistant who wants to supply a need and make that a healthy and sustainable relationship. Like I was already doing that. And when I identified that you wanted to do that as well in a way that was more sustainable for all parties involved, I was like, Val, what do you need? And you were like, well, I need to hire these people myself, or I need to find an agency that I can work with and like get into that. I was like, okay, great. Let's take well aware hiring ops as a service, right? Let's take Veronica and let's have her support you in finding that talent. And then obviously we came up to a business model that sustains everyone, right? Like Veronica's time gets well accounted for, well aware's bills get paid. You find the talent that you were ultimately looking for in the first place through the hiring operations workflow that you got to be as much a part of as you wanted. And then as an end result, your client was happy, you found them a VA, and everyone was working in a capacity that made sense to them at this point. The reason I'm for trying to pedal that a little bit is because I want to recognize that partnership. It's sort of a meta system
Yeah,
to what I tend to do, where it's like
totally.
I tend to find just what you do, which is the client who needs the VA. It's like, great, that's a matchmake game. Great. But finding people who are doing that as well and saying, I can help you meet the desire to find the market of folks that you want to then matchmake yourself. Or in the case of another client we have, it's not so much that she's doing the matchmaking as she's doing the scoping of work, and then we're matchmaking.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
to me, I find it to be such a fascinating approach because at the end of the day, it's like, and this is counterintuitive to everything we just watched, right? Or at least
yeah,
somewhat counterintuitive, right? Like it's a paradox to be like AI is amazing, but also like human beings are still the greatest APIs I've seen to this day, right? Still the most
yeah,
robust, still the most capable, still the most adaptive. And then when you combine the two, it gets particularly interesting. I think that's where the sort of the paradox starts to bleed out a little bit. But anyway, I wanted to get just your thoughts on that experience so
Yeah,
far. We're obviously grateful to be part of your
totally.
team in that respect, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, let me just start also by saying, like, I did have a career pivot from my like operations side at the previous startup into HR, where, I'd had for a long time hired, managed, trained, done it all. Then I went straight to scaling that company to like 200 people. And so in that, I knew how to hire people very well, and I know what it takes, and I know it's a process, and I know it takes time, and I know and I can appreciate that. And I do believe that the people skills are actually going to become even more valuable as AI and technology scale more and more, because now anybody can do that. Do you have the people skills? Do you have, you know, that kind of lens to be able to see people's skills and can they grow and blah blah blah. So to me, I know what I would want in a recruiting team or what I would want in somebody that's helping me hire. And I have expectations for that. And I've done it before and I know what it looks like. And so working with your team has been reassuring because I know that it's getting done in a way that I would do it. And I'm getting really great quality people because it's clear and I can tell the process works. So for me, it's like a no brainer to use your team. Like, why would I go create my own team when I like, why would I reinvent the wheel? I would love to use your team and you're already doing it great and find qualified people and then I continue doing what I've been doing, which is managing, uh, these people, making sure that they're doing what they're doing. And that's where I think was what I was looking to do because I was just getting handed somebody that wasn't even being supported as a human in a great way, financially and like emotionally. And there's nothing I love more than seeing people grow and flourish and like scale. And I know that they're not with me forever, but I want to make sure that their time is valuable with me. And so I know you're doing that as well. So to me, it felt like our values were in line when it came to hiring people for our clients. So it's been a no-brainer and I'm so grateful for that because if you look at it, like you said, it's like, why would you help me? But at the end of the day, we have the same values, which is to help operations and businesses run well. And I can't do what you do and you can't do what I do, but we can certainly help each other nerd out and find other ways to help other businesses because there's plenty of business out there.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I will sort of I'll leave sort of on the open-ended side of things, the sort of the operator's loneliness, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can
Yeah.
get pretty quiet on our side when we're just kind of tinkering away, and it's like, all right, who's here to recognize that I'm in like a sort of a quasi state of ideas of like what I'm
Yeah.
trying to get done here. It's like who's gonna understand what sort of I'm pickling over here.
Yeah.
Because I'm into some pretty
Yeah.
weird shit
Yeah.
in terms of like how to
Yeah.
set up businesses and operations. Like, okay, cool. Finding those other people is like it's fun to talk to, and so I'm grateful for that, Val. In addition,
Yeah.
like I foresee in the same way that I would scale Veronica and her hiring operations department into larger and larger segments as the ability or as the demand for that service may continue to grow. I wouldn't be shell shocked if you were like, hey, I actually want to request Wellaware's hiring ops such that I can have my own hiring ops. Like, I don't see these one time system setups as negative businesses to take part in. It kind of brings us back to that example that you said about how this one VA found herself or themselves cutting out of a job because AI essentially replaced them. And they were the ones who set up the system in the first place. Like, great, you now have a means to build systems. You're
Yeah.
just no longer responsible for working in that transactional frame. You're now
Right.
one layer higher.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. No, I think no, and I again I truly appreciate that openness and willingness. And I think again, that's what makes great operations people, that you're not fixed on a process in a way that we, have to work or like, you know, that nastiness that doesn't need to exist, but more like, how can I help you grow? How do you need to grow? How can we support each other to do that? And I truly appreciate that.
And then how do we avoid getting into this sort of Lovecraftian state of mind where it's like I'm building a system that builds systems for systems of
Yeah.
systems? I'm just like, dude, how many layers deep am I, and like what type of drugs
Yeah.
do we need to get on in order to get out of here? But Val,
Yeah.
thank you for our
Totally.
time today.
Yeah.
Where can people reach you?
Yeah. You can reach me, Val at valgorithm.io. Valgorithm.io is my website. You can just submit a contact form, come straight to me. Any of those ways is easy. I'm very responsive. I would give my number, but that's probably not the right thing to do here. So, just email me and I'm happy to get in contact with you, see how I can support you. And yeah, and I love what I'm doing just like you do. And yeah, I don't know.
Val, thank you for our time.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is so fun, as always.